On June 2016, my life plunged into pitch black darkness when my oldest son, Chase, died in a car accident. The death of a child is like having a bright light suddenly extinguished in the middle of the night and not being able to see anything until your eyes adjust to the dark. It takes time as little by little you begin to make out shapes and textures. The death of a loved one or the death of a relationship and even the death of our dreams all can send us to the edge of losing our faith. It's like a sudden shift from light to dark, and only very slowly does one begin to perceive what was once familiar. Maybe loss or death has invaded your life in a way you didn't anticipate, and you're trying to navigate your pain or that of those around you. I've been where you are. When life disappoints us and when you feel God has disappointed you, it's easy to lose hope. I've had to wrestle with God for myself, for my family, and even for my community. But what I found is a God willing to listen to our cries and our questions. And what I've come to believe is actually stronger and more sustaining. My hope is that you'll find a safe place to explore your questions and doubts, or help a friend or family member do the same when life doesn't make sense. It will not illuminate your entire path, but it might help you take one more step. Recently, I sat down with my good friend and Hollywood actor Eric Close to talk about the importance of gratitude in our lives. You know, life has a way of making it really hard to be grateful, whether things are going great or whether things are not. Gratitude is this elusive quality that always seems to just be out of reach for us. The Apostle Paul, actually, he talked a lot about gratitude and the importance of it in our lives. He wrote a letter to the church in Thessalonica where he talks about gratitude. And this church was experiencing great difficulty, both internal conflict and external conflict from people within the church and outside of the church. And he writes these words to the church in Thessalonica in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 16. He writes, "Always be joyful." Always be joyful. There's something here important, and he connects joyfulness with gratitude. Always be joyful. Never stop praying. Be thankful in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus. Sometimes I read these words and I think, Paul, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. I mean, how do we be thankful in all circumstances? You, like me, probably have experienced great tragedy in your life, and be thankful in all circumstances. I'm not thankful for every circumstance in my life. So what Paul is trying to get at is that the pathway to joy, to always being joyful in this life, runs right through gratitude. Matter of fact, I don't think we can experience happiness in this life unless we figure out how to be grateful. And how to be grateful, whether things are going really good or whether things are going really badly, is important. So my conversation with Eric, you'll probably recognize Eric. He's starred in shows years ago, Without a Trace, Nashville more recently, several Hallmark movies he's been in and directed, as well as starring in Clint Eastwood's movie American Sniper. And he talks about the struggle that he's had to be grateful when he was trying to make it in Hollywood, and it was really hard, how he tried to be grateful in those times, but also when he did make it and when things were going great, and how difficult it was even then to experience gratitude. Eric lives here in Central Oregon and attends our church, Westside Church, and he also he has a wonderful wife, Carrie, 2 lovely daughters. And whether you've experienced really difficult times or great times, I hope that this conversation about gratitude will encourage you. Well, it's great to be with you guys today. And as I mentioned, I'm here with a really dear friend of mine, Eric Close. We've been building a relationship for many years now, and we're talking about gratitude as one of the fundamentals of our faith. And I wonder, just from where you're sitting right now in this moment, what's the role of gratitude in the midst of adversity? You know, I think about people that are watching, they're going through a lot right now. And, you know, the struggles and everything that we're facing. How do we find gratitude when real life happens?
You know, it's easy in these difficult times, and on top of it, you add in what we've been enduring around the world.
Right.
And, sometimes it's easy to think, oh, this is just happening here in the United States, but I'm supposed to take my brother to Germany in a few days for experimental treatment, and Germany shut down. So, we got to go there in quarantine. And so everybody across the globe could relate to what we're talking about and having this gratitude. And I find that attitude is a choice.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that.
That's right.
You can choose to have a great attitude or a bad attitude. So batitude or gratitude, and it's like, what do you choose? And I think that it really comes down to that, is how do you approach each situation. And it doesn't mean you try to act like it isn't a bad deal right now, or it's a bummer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's real. Like you and I said, it's real life.
Yeah. You're not putting blinders on.
No. Or acting like I'm so religious that,
nothing bothers me.
I'm all
fine.
good. I got the Lord and everything. He's in part of, for me, what's so great, what brings me gratitude is knowing that the Lord is walking through this with us, and He is right there with my brother.
Yeah.
One of my brothers, especially my brother who's sick, and we were kind of rowdy kids when we were up through until young adulthood. And what was so awesome is when the Lord called us to Him, and just transformed our lives. One of the greatest moments in my life, and all the fun that he and I have had together, and our other brother as well, is my brother Christopher and I, who's struggling with cancer. We got baptized together.
What? That's awesome.
Yeah, on January 14th. And so whenever January 14th rolls around, I'm like, hey, happy birthday! It's our birthday, brother.
That's so awesome.
And so looking back on, that's just one of thousands and thousands of wonderful memories that we've shared together.
Yeah.
And so in this difficult time, in this, where there's grief and unknown of what's to come right in the moment, it's just, I find gratitude. I'm so thankful to the Lord that all the times that we've gotten to be together and do things. And even during this time, during this pandemic, I've been able to spend some really good quality time with Him.
Wow.
Where I wouldn't have been able to if I was off working somewhere.
So gratitude isn't let's pretend to be grateful. You're literally calling back memories that you've had, things that you've experienced with your brother and other times where you can look back and say, I'm grateful for those moments. And they're helping you. It sounds like they're helping you like right now in the middle of this
absolutely
hardship. Yeah.
And I'm grateful for the family and friends that we're surrounded by. I mean, today, 14 people showed up from my brother's daughter's school just to be there to help him get to the car, to get to the emergency room.
That's amazing.
I mean, community.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the community that, our friendships and our family and, there's so many things, but yeah, that's one of those things where I look and I go, man, I'm so grateful for I guess what you would call is like our team.
That's great.
It's all these people that you can count on. I got a phone call in the middle of the night from a friend. I know that I can call them in the middle of the night. So
having a team is pretty important.
Yes, it is.
Having a community of people, however that forms.
Yeah, not trying to go it alone.
I love that. So you talked about your faith. I mean, you have a strong faith, Eric, through everything that you've been through in your life, the successes, the hardships. It sounds like this faith in God has been something of a foundation for you. Talk a little bit about that in terms of how that's helped you in your life with gratitude and otherwise.
Yeah, one of the things I tell people this often, one of the things I'm grateful for is that my relationship with Jesus started before I had any what the world would call success in the business.
Wow.
I remember sitting in my apartment downtown LA and feeling very lost. I had graduated from college and was kind of looking at I was having a pity party and I was looking at the clock and the second hand ticking by, and I was just like, what am I doing with my life? And I had walked away from the Lord. I was 13 when I had first come to surrender my life to Him, and now here I'm 22 years old and I'm looking at my life and going, something's missing. And I remember just saying a very simple prayer. It was like, okay, God, I don't know if you want to have anything to do with me, but I miss you. That's all I said. And from that point forward, He just started saying, I'm here and I want to be in relationship with you.
That's awesome.
And the wonderful things of the people that just, I can look back and just see, I could write a timeline of everything and just like, yeah, that's God, that's God, that's God. Just the people that came into my life that, and then I ended up going to church with them and whatever, and then inviting my family and then just watching my entire family come to the Lord. And, and so I was grateful for that because he opened so many doors. And so, my relationship with Christ is really informed everything. And I don't always get it right, but the decisions that I have to make as an individual or with my wife, Carrie, it's like, okay, Lord, give us some wisdom here. Help us make decisions, whether it comes down to a role that I have to choose to do. It can be a myriad of things, but he has been as we try to keep him at the center of all of this because and this is just in the world, Steve, that it's not just Hollywood. The world offers you, all these things that's going to make your life so much better. Yeah. If you have this or if you have that, or people think of you this way. And going in the beginning, I'm thankful that I had, because I know me, and I wouldn't have done very well without Jesus in my career. Yeah.
Well, there's a thought out there.
So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, there's probably people watching. Eric, he made it in an industry that's really hard to make it in. He's been successful. Of course, it's easy for him to be grateful. What do you say to that? Like, is it only successful people that are grateful, or do you see how gratitude has worked throughout your life? Maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I think that is people can look at that and think, oh, well, it's easy to be great. Yeah, like you said, it's easy to be grateful when you've got it made, or whatever, you're set. What people are thinking, what does that mean? But I've been fortunate to travel all over the world. Carrie and I have been to Africa and Mexico and some other countries where we've been, we've seen real poverty and illness. I remember being in Africa and one of our guides had TB and AIDS, and he was out there working really hard, and he just had the most joyous spirit, and then he would go home after work, and then he'd have to walk 2 miles to get water for his family. And it's like, and he was grateful. And then, but I've also seen that same gratitude with people that are incredibly successful or done very well in whatever they're achieving their dreams. And so it really comes down to, it's not the success that makes you grateful. It goes back to, again, it's that choice. It's like, am I going to be, and I think personally that it's almost harder to be grateful when you have all this success, because you can often forget that you can forget the Lord in it. Yeah. And you sort of just expect it. And it just becomes this thing of like, oh, well, it just is what it is. But and I remember first starting out, and I remember so often just thinking, it doesn't get better than this. And I was like in my little apartment, and and Carrie and I are newly married, and we got our dog, and I'm thinking, this just doesn't get better than this. Yeah. Right?
Every little thing.
Yeah.
You're
everything,
grateful for.
Every victory, every role that I would get was just huge. I'd just be like, Lord, I really want to.
Probably even every possibility of a role, like every phone call.
I got an audition. I got an audition. Oh, it's so great.
Right.
And it's easy. And I have been guilty of this, where as things, started to work more, and there were times where I kind of took it for granted. Yeah. And I have to remind myself, you are so fortunate, and and wanting to have that same enthusiasm and fire every time I get a role. Yeah. But the world has a good way of humbling you to really do that. So, yeah.
So I think, someone who's lived his dream, you've lived a great life, Eric, and obviously it's not over, great future ahead. But what encouragement would you give to someone who has been working hard toward a dream and they haven't seen it become a reality yet? What words of encouragement would you give to somebody that's maybe even they're like, I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if that dream's going to become a reality. What would you tell them?
Well, when people are chasing a dream, and I can only speak from my own experience, but I felt that I was really called to do this, because there's no one in my family. I mean, I have a great uncle from Hungary that was an actor and a stage designer.
Okay, so you're not related to Glenn Close.
No,
I think that's probably people are going to be wondering.
Not related to Glenn Close. I met her though one time. That was really cool. But so, I went into an industry that I didn't know a soul, and it's an industry, there's a lot of nepotism, which is cool. I think it's great when you see, one, child of another actor who's now working in the business. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I didn't have that. And I really was just like, okay, Lord, if this is what you're calling me to do, then just make it clear to me. And I had the good fortune of meeting Tom Cruise one time, and he told me, we had a conversation because it was in the beginning of my career. And he just told me, just work hard, just keep, sticking with it and don't give up. And he also kind of said, for me, he goes, I set a goal that in 10 years, if I haven't gotten one job and and it's like I'm still banging my head against the wall, maybe I need to do something else. But I'm going to give myself
10 years.
That decade to
That's
just
amazing.
go for it. But he was 18 years old. So you can be 28 years old and kind of still feel like, okay, I still got it.
Yeah, and he had risky business.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The rest is history.
But I
whatever.
just thought that was good advice of just like,
So good.
I sort of thought what my advice would be is just go for that dream. But look, I'm talking to believers too, is that that I felt like I had to say, Lord, here's what my father-in-law has this great saying, pray first, then plan. Instead, a lot of times we always these plans, then we go, okay, Lord, here's my plans.
Yeah.
Instead of like, okay, Lord, I'm seeking your guidance on this. Help me come up with a plan. Yeah. And so
it's kind of submitting your dreams to God's purposes for your
just
life.
praying about it, and then help me figure out how to plan that out. And I think that you have to be realistic too in your dreams, because there's like now, if I was to tell you right now, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to become a really good tennis player and I'm going to win Wimbledon. Probably not. Yeah. Probably not going to happen, Right. So you have to be realistic in those dreams. And I also tell people, don't be afraid to ask. I think a lot of times people have fear of rejection, or you're just going to be told no.
Yeah.
And I try to encourage, young people with pursuing a dream. I just go, don't be afraid to ask for what it is, or tell someone what your dream is. Go, hey, I really want to do this. This is what I want to do. And the worst you're going to get is a no.
Yeah. So go for it, right? Yeah. I mean, I love that. Okay. So my wife has this tradition at Thanksgiving, which I don't really like it, Eric, to be honest with you.
You feel like you're on the spot?
I feel like it's on the spot. It puts me on the spot. So I'm going to do it to you. I'm sorry. I'm going to do my wife's tradition where everybody's sitting around the table is given the option to participate, but really it's not the option. They have to participate in the Thanksgiving tradition of naming one thing that they're grateful for.
See, I can't do that one thing. That's impossible. I mean, first of all, I think it's a cool tradition. We do the same thing. We go around the table and we talk about, with our family and friends. Thanksgiving's always been for us, not only just for family, we kind of open our door to people who are like, they may be working, out of town and they don't have a place to go. And it's like, all right, come on, Carrie's cooking.
Yeah,
and,
that's
my
awesome.
wife likes to cook, but we love to talk about what we're grateful for and what we're thankful for. And, obviously I don't want it to sound cliche, but I'm thankful for Jesus because he's at the center of all the other things I'm thankful for. And, I'm thankful for my wife. I'm thankful for the way the Lord brought her into my life, and it was just so obvious. It's like, okay, hey, dummy, there she is, And incredibly grateful for her and our children and our family and our friends, and and there's this like silly things that I'm incredibly grateful for. Like I'm grateful for my Harley,
Yeah, right.
It's just cool to be able to get out and ride. Or one thing that people might relate to is I'm grateful for the game of golf.
Yeah.
I picked this sport up when I met my wife, and the relationships that have been built through that game over a lifetime is extraordinary. And I'm grateful for that. And the simple things like FaceTime.
Yeah.
And air travel. And, the other morning I walked out and looked up at the stars. I took the dog out and I looked up and I was just like, wow, thank you, Lord. It's so amazing. So there's an incredible amount of things to be grateful for. I'm grateful for my brother, that while he's here in his fight, I mean, he's a fighter.
He's a fighter. Yeah.
Grateful for him.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome, Eric.
So, I mean, I could go.
I love that.
A ton of things.
It's interesting, Eric, that you have the macro, the universe, as you're staring up at the stars, and then the micro, just the game of golf and the relationships that have been built there. I think that's a good lesson for us all to like remind ourselves of not just the big things, but the big things and the little things that we can be grateful for in this difficult season that all of us are in.
I was going to say one thing. I was going to say, and this is hard. This is one of the tougher things, is to be grateful or thankful for the suffering or the tough times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's scriptural. I mean, it's talking about give thanks for all things.
That's right.
Consider it all joy. And that's something that I wrestle with, but have been really trying to grasp of like, okay, Lord, thank you for whatever these lessons are within this. And thank you for those that are around us when we're going through the difficult times. But I know that we come out of those tough times and better.
Yeah. Eric, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
You bet.
I'm so grateful to Eric for taking the time to be with us in that interview, but also for his relationship in my life. You know, several years ago, my oldest son, Chase, died in a one-car accident and nearly destroyed me. I mean, it was just one of the hardest times in my life, as you can imagine. And Eric was and has continued to be a close friend to me who walked with me through that very dark season. And I found something that Eric talked about in that interview to be true in my own life and in my own story, is that at first I couldn't find anything to be grateful for. Of course, I mean, everything kind of turned upside down. And so what do you find to be grateful for? But then I began to see both little things like the mountains that I live nearby, or big things like my other children that God blessed me with that I could be grateful for. And I had to intentionally lean into gratitude to help me through that season. And I think that's the most important thing that I want you to feel in today's message, is that you can find, whether they're big things or little things, to be grateful for in whatever season you find yourself in today. You know, there's a psalm that is really amazing. It makes me smile every time I read it, so it's not a bad one to read every single day. But it's Psalm 100 that David wrote these words: "Shout with joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him singing with joy. Acknowledge that the Lord is God, that he made us, and that we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. So enter into his gates with thanksgiving, go into his courts with praise, give thanks to him and praise his name, for the Lord is good. His unfailing love continues forever, and his faithfulness continues to each generation." I just kind of want to read that psalm again. I'm not going to, but I want to, because it describes not that life is just always good, because we know it's not. We know that there's struggle, and we know that there's heartache, but that we can find, even in the midst of those things, we can look to God and we can say, God, would you help me to be grateful to you, because your unfailing love, even in the midst of some of our darkest seasons of life, we can experience his unfailing love. His faithfulness that continues through every generation, through all the ups and the downs of this life, that we can, because of his faithfulness and his unfailing love, we can enter into his presence with thanksgiving and with praise. And he can cause us, as we do that, like I said earlier, the road to happiness goes right through gratefulness. That if we want to experience joy and contentment in this life, we have to discover how to be grateful today. Whether things are going great or whether things are going really hard right now for you, would you just think of 2 or 3 things in your life that you can thank God for? Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's the location in which you live. Maybe it's the job that you have. Maybe it's the relationships that God's given you, the family that you have. It won't be the same for everyone, but would you just call out 2 or 3 things, even right now, to God, like a prayer? God, I'm thankful for your love. God, I'm thankful for the family you've given me. God, I'm thankful for the place that I live. Whatever it is for you, would you just call that out loud right now, wherever you're at, and thank God for all that he's provided for you, all that he's given to you? Because the road to happiness, true happiness and joy in this life, runs right through gratitude. Have a great day.
This is not a stage. The lights of the show, the roar of the crowd, have no place in this grand auditorium. The theater is vast, but the audience is one. Lofty phrases echo throughout, but the applause is saved for the simple. It is here that we meet with God. He is your Father. He knows you. When we fumble over our words, He responds, "Pray like this. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, as above, so below." Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Westside TV exists to equip you, the viewer, and those around you with the life and the love of Jesus. Now, we believe wholeheartedly that the way of Jesus is not just a way, it's not just an option, but it's actually the best way to live our lives and interact with the world around us. So whenever we're faced with all these thoughts and opinions and these directions and information and everything that we're consumed with in our current world, we can actually go back to the way of Jesus to receive that anchoring effect, that thing that we need to understand, hey, we're headed on the right path, and life sometimes is hard, sometimes it's wonderful and beautiful, sometimes it's painful. No matter what, we can go back to the way of Jesus to be grounded again. That's why Westside TV exists. If you want to follow along or you want more information, go to westside.tv.